Hi, I'm Matt Merlo, and this is my sister Ella. I'm going to be teaching her about the two specific strategies most teachers use in everyday classrooms, one being object-centered and the other being subject-centered. Now, we went to the same high school, so we kind of have similar experiences in classrooms, and that would be more like I had at least a teacher stood in front of us, lectured us on a subject, and that's pretty much it. Would you agree? Or?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that would be considered object-centered versus subject-centered. We have some diagrams explaining what I was describing. Object-centered here, you take your object, which are more like facts, goes to the teacher here, and then that teacher spits it right to the students, and that's where it ends. She just kind of relays the information to the students, and that's that. Whereas subject-centered, we have the subject in the center here, teacher outside with the students, in a large circle with arrows connecting every single one of them with the subject. That's more of like a group discussion class or a way to relay information and ideas or concepts with each other versus just here, the teacher explains and that's that. Everybody here is connected. So there are certain differences between the two, and that's like the arrows and the location of the teacher and students. With object-centered, clearly the arrows only point one way. They point down to the teacher from the object, and then from the teacher to the students. Versus subject-centered, you have arrows from the subject to the students and teacher, and then back. So the teacher takes the subject or the ideas and goes back and forth with it, along with going back and forth with students. That's giving students the opportunity to be engaged and, be involved and kind of speak and learn together versus being taught in this way. This kind of shows the differences between the two and the relationships that teachers have with the students and what the students have with the ideas or the subject of their class. So, I guess one way of asking would be, what would you prefer? If you could go back to high school and, or maybe even just the classes you have in college now. I don't know what they'd be like, but if you could go back to high school and choose which one you'd rather be involved in, what would you rather have?
Personally, I would rather have the subject-centered just because I like the idea of, a group discussion and the peers all talking together than just being taught and just moving,
Yeah, I would too. I think that this would be a lot better. We've had classes, at least I've had classes like this, in college and in high school, but I had more of these than these here. I had classes that had both as well, and I think that's the best way. I think obviously this is the best in terms of being engaged and getting students to be involved in your class or your subject. But I think that if a teacher can use the object-centered, then, they should be able to use it. I think that's good to use, just not all the time. Most teachers who use this, I believe, use it constantly. That's the only form of class that they have. Versus over here, I think if you had a mix between the both, or maybe 70% this and 30% object, it'd be a little better.
Yeah.
Maybe using the object-centered way of teaching as a way to get the subject to the students, and then using the subject-centered method of teaching to get the students to understand or, pass the ideas that they have around with each other. And that's the difference between the two.